You need to hear this carefully because what started as a geopolitical dispute has now taken a turn that few in Europe ever imagined. President Donald Trump has linked his aggressive push to take control of Greenland to his long-standing grievance over not receiving the Nobel Peace Prize, adding a deeply personal dimension to what is already being described as the most severe transatlantic crisis in generations. In a leaked weekend text message to Norway's Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre, Trump wrote that after being denied the Nobel Peace Prize last year, he no longer felt obligated to think purely of peace and could instead focus on what he considered best for the United States before questioning Denmark's ownership of Greenland and repeating his demand for complete American control of the Arctic territory. The Nobel Peace Prize, awarded by a committee based in Norway, has long been something Trump has openly coveted, and his remarks immediately alarmed European leaders already struggling to contain rising tensions triggered by US tariff threats against countries opposing a Greenland takeover. Norway's Prime Minister confirmed the authenticity of the message, explaining that it came in response to a text sent on behalf of Norway and Finland urging de-escalation and opposing US tariffs. An attempt at diplomacy that appeared to fail almost instantly. The White House sought to downplay the controversy, with spokeswoman Anna Kelly insisting Trump's stance on Greenland is driven by national security concerns and his belief that Greenlanders would be better protected under US control, while Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent dismissed any link to the Nobel Prize as a false narrative and warned Europe that retaliation would be very unwise. Trump himself later tried to soften his remarks, claiming he did not care about the prize, even as he repeated his belief that Norway effectively controls the Nobel process and doubled down on his insistence that the United States has to have Greenland. Across Europe, however, the reaction has been swift and increasingly defiant, with leaders from Britain, France, Sweden, Italy and Germany condemning what they describe as intimidation and economic blackmail against allies. And British Prime Minister Keir Starmer warning that a trade war over Greenland would harm workers and businesses, while calling for dialogue between Europe, Greenland and Washington. At the same time, NATO officials have been scrambling to reassure allies, with Secretary-General Mark Rutte holding talks with Danish and Greenlandic officials on Arctic security, even as Denmark proposed a possible NATO mission to Greenland. European policymakers now face a stark choice. Continue trying to calm Trump through diplomacy or prepare for retaliation, including the possible use of the European Union's powerful trade tools, such as imposing tariffs on more than $100 billion worth of American goods, or activating the bloc's never-used anti-coercion instrument, often described as its trade bazooka, which could target US services and technology firms operating in Europe. The European Union insists it wants to avoid escalation, but officials warn they will hold their ground as Russia watches closely, with Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov suggesting Trump could go down in history over Greenland, a comment that has only deepened European fears that the rift within NATO could ultimately benefit Moscow. What is clear is that Trump's bid to acquire Greenland, now intertwined with personal grievances, tariff threats and Arctic security, has pushed relations between the United States and Europe into uncharted territory, raising the risk of a lasting fracture in the Western alliance if neither side backs down.